All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is having a nice Tuesday. We are, I'm going to say we're definitely almost to break, which is very nice for everybody. But we just want to welcome you guys to our session this month.
All right, so this month, we are focusing on networks and systems design concept area. So everything we're gonna be doing is focused on that. We do have some people who are gonna share some things that they've been doing in their classroom. So you'll be able to see that as well near the end of our session today. Of course, we're welcome. Our first activity we're going to do is called Two Truths and a Lie. And then we're going to we're going to have you click on a link and you're going to go to a Padlet. And Parker has shared the link to the Padlet in the chat. And what you're going to do is you're going to type in, you're going to click on the plus sign, and you don't have to put a subject. You can just write in the text field. And two truths about the standards, something that you've learned about the standards so far, and a lie. And I just did an example of a lie here, but it says the standards are only for computer science courses. So that's obviously a lie about the standards. So just thinking about things that you know for sure about the standards, how they were created, or how they should be integrated, or how they're going to help our learners as now and in the future, and then any lies that people or misconceptions people might have about the standards that might interfere with them integrating them into their classroom or even getting to know the standards. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Let me know if you have any trouble clicking on the link. And I'm going to hide it while people work on it, and then we'll share it. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Let me just make these a little bigger. So see if I can get this. All right, and take a minute to look at some of the content here. Some people did them together, some people did them separately. So if you look at one, try to determine, is this a truth or a lie? Like some of these, you need to cover every standard in your curriculum. Definitely what? Truth or lie? Thumbs up for truth, thumb down for lie. Yep, you're right, Kelly. Oh, who has the standards tattooed on their arm? The standards have to be done on a computer. That's probably a very big misconception that a lot of people have about these standards. And I think that we've done numerous examples and you have interacted with numerous activities that illustrate that that is not the case. So that's something good to think about. The networks and systems design, the sub-concepts include hardware and software and digital citizenship. That's a lie. Definitely thinking about that. So it's just getting you guys to think a little bit more about the standards, how you've been working with them, how you can see some of the misconceptions that might be out there. So if you are having conversations with other educators in your building, to kind of think about what they may be, some of their misconceptions might be around the standards. That was our welcome activity. Again, we go over this every time. I feel a little redundant saying this all the time, but we're going to remember our agreements that we created over the summer with both cohorts as we work together, because we will be going into breakout rooms. Today's learning targets are, we are going to, I can integrate the networks and system design standards into plugged and unplugged activities. I can align the networks and system design standards to Bloom's taxonomy, which Parker's going to highlight the lesson for today and go over that. One thing I do want to talk to you about is we did go in and update the Google Sites. I'm going to show you real quick. If you're in the Google site and you click on webinars, you'll see we have the dates of the webinars as well as any of the recordings that we have done so far are in here. So you can click on them and view them if you wish. And then I've also added some additional resources. The computational thinking mazes are some really great activities that are a little bit more sophisticated than the coding of a person, like we did when we were together in the summer where we coded Parker to do something. These computational thinking mazes are, they really integrate the computational thinking standards nicely and are great for secondary. I linked the resource, the presentation recording, as well as a PDF that shows the different mazes that you can do in your classroom. And obviously they can be adapted as you see fit. Another thing that I added was Rubik's Cube seems to be making a comeback. I tried to explain to somebody that when I had a Rubik's Cube, we didn't have YouTube to go to get instructions on how to solve it. So we had to rely on our brain power. But there's some interesting resources that you can do in your classroom with the Rubik's Cube in all different curricular areas. Like there's some really cool, like doing like the dot art with the cubes, and you have to have kids, you know, solve the cube a certain way so that you could create one big picture. And there was a website in which you could borrow a classroom set of Rubik's Cubes for a month and then send them back. And I think they got inundated with requests, so that site is down right now. But if it comes back up, I'll let people know. But there's a lot of ways that you can, I think you can get a Rubik's Cube at the dollar store now, or the 5 and under or something like that if your kids are interested. And then a fellow NYSCATE facilitator did create some books in Book Creator focused on the on the standards, so all of the different concept areas. I shared it last month in the email, and I think Debbie shared it as well with her coach's email. But it's just it's a book creator, and it has some different examples and hits every single concept area, and has some examples. It tries to hit. I think they try to hit examples for every grade band, so they're in those books for you to use. So as we find different resources that we feel will help you, we'll add them here, and we'll let you know that we've updated, and we'll just keep adding the recordings here as well. Both cohort sites have been updated, so you'll see it on both of them. Any questions about the Google site? I'll reshare the links to those in the follow-up email as well. So just a reminder, sorry, it does say computational thinking, but it's supposed to say networks and systems designs. So the sub-concept areas are the hardware and software and the networks and in the internet. And just a reminder about what these sub-concept areas mean. So for hardware and software, that makes sense, right? It's your computing system that's composed of hardware and software and the individuals who use them. And then the hardware refers to the physical components that make up a computing device. So you have, all those components that go together to make your computing device. And then the software refers to the program instructions that operate on such hardware. Makes sense. I think that's not very confusing for most people, right? So networks in the internet, networks are formed by connecting individual devices in a variety of ways. And then data is stored on one or more of the devices in the network, and it transfers the data between the devices using a set of protocols or rules. I do believe we did discuss during the summer ways that there is a way to create a network that isn't like a technology type of network. And we're going to show you an example in a minute. But just thinking about that, it doesn't always have to be a technical network, especially for helping younger students understand networking, and even older students as well, if they're having a hard time with that type of concept. And then the internet is an example of the global network that transmits data between many devices around the world. So that's like the internet connecting to all those different networks is this huge, vast web. That's why they call it web. So, and then any questions on these concept areas? I'll update the title on this before I share this resource with you, but we will be sending the slideshow to you to use. If you want to share it with people, feel free to share it with people. We're really hoping that because they're expecting, these to be integrated by 2024, we're really trying to help people who weren't in the Smart Start grant also learn about these different concept and sub-concept areas. So feel free to share any of your resources with people in your buildings or across your district.
One example of networks, because again, just like Dorian was saying, that is something that sometimes people kind of feel like they hit a pothole when they're trying to explain networks to students. And Dorian's going to show a very nice example of networks. But before she does that, sorry. One example that I've done with students before, especially younger students, when we're trying to talk about networks, is having them having the students work together to put together a puzzle. But each student has one piece of the puzzle, and they all have to pass it along to the person who's putting the puzzle together. And that is a good example of a network. It's a very simple example of a network, but it's a good starting place that one student has some information that they have to pass along to another student who's then going to put the puzzle together. That's a very simple example, but that is a good starting point when you're trying to think of networks with students.
All right, so can I show the example now, Parker?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you could always show.
So this is just the network of us, right? The Smart Start grant, the first year we're doing this cohort A and B. This is, NYSED provided this grant, and Monroe and BOCES was awarded the grant. We are working with NYSCATE, and then we have the coaches, we have teachers and students mixed into this network with multiple districts. So you can think about how we're all interconnected together, learning about these standards and integrating these standards into curriculum. And it's just one way to think about a network. I know some of the examples we talked about was looking at your family network, who might be in your family network. It might be an extended family. It might be people who aren't related but create your family. You can look at your community and talk about how the community works and networks together to be successful and forge that relationship and those connections, because it's all about those connections between the different elements of a network that makes it work, and share information like a computer network would share data. So we just wanted to give you a little visual so you could see kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about networks, when we're not always thinking about the technology part of the network, helping students understand how that works. All right, so now we're going to go to this example lesson, and I am going to open it up, and then Parker is going to take it away.
All right, so so we are not going to go through, moving forward, we're not going to go through the lesson piece by piece, because you guys are definitely going to be doing that in your breakout rooms. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to just bring your attention to. Obviously, we have our learning objectives, but Dorian, can you go down to the standards? So right here is where we have the computer science and digital fluency standards that we're hitting. Obviously, before that, I also had the content standards. So taking a look at our standards here, you're going to notice that we have where it says networks and system design, we are labeling the concept, and then we're labeling the sub-concept area before we put the actual standard identifier on here. So this is a model of how we would like you guys in your lessons to list the standards. So in your lesson plans, just so we can clearly see what is the concept, what is the sub-concept area, and then you have your standard identifier where it says 4.6 NSD.1. So this is how we would like you guys to model putting your standards in. Then if you scroll down, Doreen, to the body of the lesson, a little further down, next page, you will then notice that what I did was I took the standard identifier and I highlighted it and I put it next to how the students will be showing that standard. So how we know that the students are hitting that standard. I know we've had a lot of conversations, a few conversations about this in the past few webinars, but this is a very simple way for you to be able to put in the body how the students are hitting the standards. So then we know that by completing this part of the activity, the standards, the students are hitting the digital literacy standard right there that I have listed. By doing explain that you would like them to improve on the design that the teacher created, I listed that that's going to hit the networks and system design standard that I am using for this activity. So this is just a nice little model of how we want you guys, one way that you can put, let us know how the students are going to be hitting that standard and where it fits within the body of the lesson. Anything you want to add about that, Doreen?
No, I think this is probably the easiest way.
Yeah.
Last month I had copied the activity and popped it, in this area where I listed the standards. This is definitely going to be less time consuming to do it this way by just adding the standard identifier. I think it's an easy way. And then when we're reviewing it, we'll be able to know. And then as we share these lessons, the end user will be able to see that.
Exactly. So again, we've been modeling different ways that we would like you guys, ways that you can put that into your lesson. But this we found after talking a little bit and listening to what you guys were saying to us, that this is the easier way for this to happen. So this is how we modeled it on the lesson. We have the body's not super long. I don't have every little step that the students are going to be doing, but I have a clear explanation of how to complete this lesson with students. Again, we're not going to read the lesson to you guys because you guys have time to look at that. And then in the materials and resource section, we did list and link everything that you could use in this activity.
One thing to keep in mind, people have started sharing their resources with us, their portfolio and their lessons and so forth. please make sure when you're sharing that folder, you're putting everything in the folder. So, you put the portfolio in that folder and every lesson. So then it automatically shares it with us because you're sharing that folder with us. So anything you put in that folder, we will be able to access and look at. So that's important to remember, and make sure that any materials or resources are linked or shared in the folder, or somehow, if I shared this lesson with someone, they would have the tools they need in order to integrate this lesson into their classroom.
And again, the biggest reason for doing that is just so, you guys are all busy. We don't want to keep emailing you and bothering you if we need access to some of the files or folder or examples that you're giving us. So if you just, again, make that one folder, share that folder with us, and then put everything in that folder, we're not going to say, oh, now we need access to this. Now we need access to that, and it will save you guys time.
Any
All right.
questions about the lesson or how we've structured it? You'll see that Parker actually hit 3 different concept areas here, and then the sub-concepts that go along with them.
Because again, we recommend not having one, obviously you would need more than 9 lessons if each lesson only had one concept area. And so we just want you guys to try to see how your lessons can hit multiple concept and sub-concept areas.
And with the networks and system designs, you only need to hit one of the concept areas, because there's only 2 concept areas. So you only need to hit one of the sub-concept areas, for this. So it makes it a little bit easier to align to this one. And for this one, the number 1 propose improvements to the design of a computing technology based on analysis of user interactions with that technology. I mean, that can be students interacting with an app or an Office 365 or a Google tool and suggesting ways that would make it work better for them as a learner. I mean, it's not the networks and systems design. There are ways for you to meet these standards without too much trouble.
Yeah, and it could also be something as simple as you're doing a lesson on the Industrial Revolution, and you're talking about an invention, and ask the students how would they make changes to this invention or something like that. So it doesn't just have to be, what would you do to this app? That's nice, but it could be something as simple in a conversation with your class of, how would you make changes to this general invention that you guys have that you're talking about, if you're bringing that up into it from your content. So again, the biggest thing we wanted to show you guys is we don't want this to be too intimidating for you when it talks about networks and system design. We want to make sure that you see it's very accessible, and definitely on the New York State site for these standards, there's a really nice page that does have examples of possible examples that people from around the state came up with, that this board who helped create these standards also said, well, this is an example that would hit the standard. This is an example that would hit the standard. And so I highly recommend going to that and taking a look if you're wondering how you could do that.
And that link, it was shared that link was shared in last month's email and in Debbie's email as well. And we'll just keep sharing those links with you so you have access to them. So Jonathan has an example. Students revise their informative writing, which is the software, to include better UI by including glossary, table of contents, etc. So there's a lot of ways that you can apply these standards across curricular areas. It's something where I think it just maybe thinking a little bit outside the box, or stretching your ideas to do something that's not something you've done traditionally in the past, and then just upgrading it or integrating these standards to change that lesson a little bit and make it very clear by using some of the vocabulary that goes along with these standards, that this is what we're hitting, so students know what they're doing and why they're doing it, which could be clearly indicated in the learning targets for the lessons.
So what we're going to do is we're going to break you guys up into breakout rooms. And we're gonna give you, is it 10 minutes, Doreen?
Yeah, I just want to get the link
Yep.
and show them the document.
Yep. So Doreen's gonna show us the document that you guys are going to be writing on. Again, it's the same, it's a little different than what we've been doing, but it's the same type of format that we've been doing with the other webinars, that you guys in your breakout room will look at the lesson and then answer your questions on the Google Doc about it.
So you're, as a group, you're gonna come up with what is this lesson about, just a quick elevator pitch, and then what are students doing during the lesson to meet the standards. I think we made it really clear, but you can focus on different elements of that and perhaps put in your own wording or however you want to do that. So we have.
Or if you notice something, maybe I didn't notice, or, if there's something like that, again, Doreen and I will be the first ones to admit we're not perfect, and we definitely miss things. So if there's something that you notice that fits and maybe a different standard, 100% write that down and let us know that. That would be really cool.
All right, so I'm just moving you out of one of the breakout rooms, Parker. I just want to.
And I'll get the link to the lesson, Doreen,
Okay.
and I'll put the link to the lesson in the chat for you guys.
So the link for the lesson, and I'll get the link for this document. Pop it in the chat as well. So just make sure that you have you have access to links. So the one from me is to this interactive document, and then Parker's sharing the lesson. And then make sure you have somebody who's would like to present when you get back into the group. And you'll have 10 minutes, you'll get a warning, then you'll have a minute to come back in the room.
Sorry, Maria, I sent it just to you. Let me send it to everybody. All right, there it is for everybody.
All right, I'll give everybody a second to click on that. And then I'm going to open the rooms. You'll be in with your groups. Any questions before we go? All right. All right, I'm resharing the screen. And we're going to start from the bottom this time. So we're going to start with group 6. Who would like to share out from group 6? So just unmute.
I'll do it. Students, hold on 1 second. Students will learn how to use recycled materials, create a scribbling machine, and discuss with their classmates how to improve this simple machine. We just really talked about how it was going to be used by younger students and discuss the problems and what works with the machine and create a better model and to get feedback and collaborate. So that's what we talked about.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to group 5.
I was in group 5. I'll start. So our elevator pitch was that students will experience the design process through literature-based unit and guided practice throughout the group design of a scribbling machine, which is down here. Okay. And we were looking actually at the SEL standards, putting those in. I mean, clearly it's the network standards, but we were trying to isolate like where on the SEL crosswalks things were falling. And I put one just as an example.
Nice.
Team 5 input, Bueller.
Nice work. And we also said that selecting appropriate digital tools would hit the computer science standards.
That's the one.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thanks.
All right. Group 4.
We just went through each of the standards and wrote down how they correlated to the lesson.
I like how you have in your elevator pitch that
Yeah.
they'll learn about perseverance, risk-taking, learning by failing while creating a scribbling machine.
That's a very nice elevator pitch.
Yeah.
The math teacher did not write that.
I know with math, I learned a lot from failure. All right, group 3. Laura. Laura's not it.
I did the writing. Somebody else needs to do the talking.
All right, who else from group 3?
We did that. Well, problem solving, students will create their own scribbling machine and then put in some of the things, the analyzing, creating, cooperative learning, problem solving, and providing feedback on what did and did not work well.
Nice.
Excellent. Group
Hey.
2.
You don't sound sick, Karen Cole. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. You're a trooper, Karen Cole.
Thank you.
You hang in there. And somebody else needs to talk next time. She's clearly not. Well.
As I wheeze my way through
That's
it.
what I'm saying. Like, how about someone without a
Karen, I didn't
pneumonia
know you
talk
were
next time?
sick.
That's okay.
Trooper,
Next time
Golden
I'll
Apple
take care
Award
of
goes
it.
to you.
Thanks, Erin.
Group 2.
I'm in group 2, so I'll speak for group 2.
Okay.
Students will read a book together and work together in groups to create a scribbling machine for younger students. And then we said signing, creating, analyzing, working cooperatively, comparing and contrasting, giving feedback. Then I also kind of noticed that they were using the Networks and Design Standard 4.6 NSD 1. Propose improvements to the design of computing technology based on analysis of user interactions with that technology. And it seemed like they were doing a lot of reflecting on the teachers' work and their work as well, which was kind of cool to see.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you. And group 1.
So they read a group about obstacles and ways that they can handle these obstacles through decision making. Then they will get into cooperative groups and persist through how to change the design of a scribbling machine to make it easier for kids their age or younger.
Excellent. So thank you so much for doing that. Any questions about the lesson? All right.
So I think we've all become familiar with this template that Dorian and I have been sharing with you guys. But again, this is our Bloom's template that just we recommend using this when you're before you get ready to start writing your rationale on the rubric, because again, Dorian and I have actually been taking what we create on this and putting it in our rationale. This not only allows you to kind of think a little bit deeper about what you're trying to have the students do, or how, as teachers, we're very good at teaching lessons sometimes, and we're very good at, well, hopefully most of the time, but we're very good at teaching lessons and doing this thing, but we kind of, at least I do, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for you guys, but I sometimes get into my routine of things and I know what I'm hitting and what I want the students to do. But if I need to really explain that to somebody else, I might get a little jumbled up. And so I really like this, not just for this activity, for writing a rationale, but I just think this is a great thing to look at when you're lesson writing in general, or when someone's asking you exactly what do you want the students to actually be doing in a certain activity or lesson. This is just a great tool for you guys to have. So it's just a nice, again, I just want to get on soapbox for a second and say that I recommend, I have this posted in my desk, by my desk in my classroom, and I like to take a look at it. Yes, I don't look at it every lesson I create or anything like that, but it's just nice for me to have it up there. So for this activity in this lesson plan, I said by the end of session 2, students will be able to compose needed changes to their and a classmate's scribbling machine. as evidenced by highlighting these changes on a feedback form after listening to a product presentation. And then what I did was, after I created this, I then went to our rubric and I added this to my rationale.
So I'm going to show you that in just a second. I want you to look, though, a lot of the verbs that were highlighted in these areas that you were focusing on are exactly from that Bloom sheet. So that's great. So let me get this in presentable form here so you can see.
Parker, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a question. Where does the rationale go? Is it in the lesson template?
No, the rationale goes on here on the portfolio rubric.
So see, Julie, there's a spot for the rationale of alignment right on the portfolio.
Okay, so there's the portfolio rubric. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because again, this is going to be what Doreen and I are using to see your understanding of the standards. So yeah, so I wrote. If we take a look at you guys can't see my cursor, so Doreen
Let
sharing.
me make it a little larger so it's easier to read. So it's this one right here.
Yep. So we have this rationale right here for this lesson, and this rationale is literally just for, if you scroll a little bit over, Doreen, to, yeah, this is just for the hardware and software subconcept. So again, if I had two different subconcept areas in networks and systems design, I need a different rationale for each one. So this rationale I wrote is only for the hardware and software subconcept standard 1. So I just have this artifact illustrates how students will look at a piece of technology, the scribbling machine, and make necessary changes to the product to optimize its usage for a particular user to complete a certain goal. Students will use the design process to help guide them to make the changes to their product, as well as give constructive feedback to the design of classmates' products. And then I put exactly from my Blooms. By the end of the second session, students will be able to assess the needed changes to their and a classmate's scribbling machine, as evidenced by highlighting these changes on a feedback form after listening to a product presentation. So it's literally just 1 or 2 sentences about the lesson, and then if you wanted to, and we highly recommend using what you created in that Bloom's template.
And if this lesson was aligned to more than one standard under the hardware and software, I would just add another line, put what standard identifier, the standard statement, and again, like Parker said, add another rationale, but make sure that that rationale was specific to that particular standard. Also, Parker also aligned it to other resources, other standards that were in there, and then you could add them to those other standards and subconcept areas of where they aligned. If we look at the lesson, it has the digital use as well as impacts of computing the accessibility. So you can also put them in those areas as well. So this one lesson hit 3 sub-concept areas in 3 different concept areas. So it really hit a nice number there.
And I know we remind you guys every month, but we just, again, minimum of 5 lessons, maximum of 9. So that's why you're going to want your lessons to be able to hit multiple concepts and sub-concept areas on your portfolio.
Any questions about the portfolio, the rationale, or how we added it to the portfolio?
And again, what's really nice about us doing it this way, I would have loved this if, like when we did the ISTE cert, if they had something like this, is by the end of our webinars, you guys will have a completed portfolio rubric to just take a look at as a model. So this will be completed, and then you'll have something to look at as you're trying to maybe get some suggestions on how to use your verbiage for your rationales, or to see what a completed portfolio looks like.
All right, let me get back to this. We did that. So today we have a couple people who are going to share something that they've created aligned to the standards. So we have Mackenzie and Paige, I believe, are sharing today. I'm going to stop sharing. And who would like to go first?
I can go.
Okay, so I have it so you can share your screen if you want.
So I didn't really I haven't written it up yet, but I'll show what I used with my students. It's actually really similar to the peanut butter and jelly thing Parker did. And I didn't really think about that until you guys talked about it earlier, but it goes with a lot of the computational thinking standards. I teach second grade, but I have a second grade class that's very, very low academically. So we do a lot of first grade stuff too. And it aligns with a lot of that. But we're just starting our informational writing. We finished narratives and are working on that now. And I'm starting it with how-to writing. So this is the lesson I used the first day to kick off that unit and kind of introduce it. So I told them they were going to teach me how to brush my teeth. I've never brushed my teeth before, and you need to tell me how to do it. I have 12 kids, so they're all shouting out all these different things, but this is pretty much what they came up with to start. Put the toothpaste on the brush and brush your teeth. So I had toothbrush and a cup of water and toothpaste, and I actually followed their directions as we went through, and my aide typed up all of their directions. And this is what we ended up changing it to, which you can see is a lot more specific. There's language bristles and things like that. But I followed exactly what they said. So they said, put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, and I put the whole tube onto the toothbrush, and the tube fell on the floor because they hadn't told me to take the cap off yet. So I didn't know to squeeze the toothpaste onto the bristles. So there was a lot of debugging happening and decomposing those originally only 2 steps into a lot more than that. But it got them very excited about how-to writing. And now that they're doing it, their writing is a lot more specific than it has been in the past. So I think it was a good way to show that to them, visually, for the kids I have as far as their writing. But obviously we wrote an algorithm, which we're continuing to work on. Had to debug, decompose the steps into smaller, more manageable steps, make sure that we were being specific. So that's really it that I have, because I haven't actually wrote it up yet. But I did it last week, and they were cracking up and thought it was hysterical. And it was just a fun break from the frustration we usually feel in writing in my classroom. So it was good.
Very cool. And did you use the language decomposition or decomposing or decomposition? And then what was the other one?
Yeah, I introduced that a little bit. But and Maria Fry knows my students, they were trying to read CVC words. So some of the language was a little hard for them to grasp, and they didn't really use the language themselves, but at least exposed it.
Right. Excellent. Very cool. It's cool to see the change between what they originally had to what they got to. So that's a really big change. That's really cool.
Can I just say, I love the language that it brought out when she was telling me about it at school. Like bristles and vocabulary they probably didn't even realize they had in their brains. And they're low kids, and they have a lot of trouble with academics. And I think this really empowered them as well. So there's a lot of social emotional stuff that I think this benefits too.
So thank you, Mackenzie. All right, let's go to Paige. Are you ready to share?
Yeah, I'm going to share a link in the chat. That's just a link to the first activity that I'm going to share out. because this activity is split. There's a K-6 version and there's a 7-12 version. So if you're looking to do it in your classroom, there's kind of something for everybody there. Hold on, I clicked the wrong thing. There we go. Are you able to see that blue slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we did in 2 weeks, and then the fun part, you'll get to see some student work. So we did a 1-day CS Hero project where students could identify someone in computer science that has done something powerful. That's to get them to see connections to all different areas. And then we did a full week of looking at different computing innovations in groups, and then a full week of really picking one innovation and doing some independent research. And this follows a big programming unit in computer science principles. So it's helping students see, like, when you're a programmer, you're doing things that impact people in society. So we focused mostly on these 2 areas, impacts of computing and digital literacy, most of which is already part of the course. So it was kind of a natural fit, but we definitely extended what we did in previous years. And this was a lot of collaboration between a lot of different people in our district, including Laura Shemansik, who's on this call right now. So here's what the CS Hero project looked like when students were done. They picked different people. They used remove.bg to remove the background so they could have person with their product or, you know, their project. And then that just got students thinking about, like, all the different people that are out there doing things in computer science. And then they're kind of talking points for the rest of the year if we want to point at somebody on the wall. Then we started looking at innovation, so not just people, but the products that they make. And students identified some things that they like to use, things like, you know, iPhones, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit. And then we narrowed it down to these 5 innovations, and then each group went and did a deep dive into that innovation. How does it benefit society? How does it harm society? Was that intended by the creator? And the Moxie robot got a lot of our high school students really talking. It's an SEL robot that's supposed to teach students how to make friends. So that was interesting to hear the, you know, benefits and harms of that. And then we started looking at bias and innovations, and specifically for voice recognition innovations. So these were questions that students were answering in small groups. They were researching, reading articles provided to them, but then they also could use any resources that they found online. And then they had to make recommendations on how to make something more inclusive. They were given a fake company called Lemon. We just have a lot of students that have been talking about lemons. So thinking about apple as a singular fruit, like lemon is a singular fruit. And here's some information about the company. We pointed out that people use different devices. 2 employees have hearing impairments. So students had to bring accessibility into the product that they were creating as well. And they were scored on a lot of the things that are aligned to these standards. So is it inclusive? Is it accessible? Did you actually offer ideas to the company about why this matters? And then Dave Moscato, who's also part of this Smart Start group, he acted as the fake CEO of Lemon. And he said that they had 2 resignations, and they have some employees that struggle to read company emails. So keep some stuff in your presentation that's engaging. Students had all kinds of GIFs and cool things. And then they did everything from making PowerPoints with feedback forms for these, you know, fake employees that need some guidance, to making a sway about more inclusivity standards, things that employees should consider when making the product. And kind of the crowd favorite among some of the students, one group acted as a consulting group that specializes in this. And they talked about, you know, if you can't hire more people, here are some things you can do with finding data. They also talked more about sign language communication being featured in this assistant software. So they added on, overall, the students just crushed it with lots of cool things. And then the second week, they're going to look at these questions with an innovation of their choice, doing really all different things from virtual reality to, you know, rockets that are going into space to like scuba diving equipment. So they really get to look at innovations from totally, you know, a new lens, not just as the user, but thinking about how it's been developed intentionally by the creator. And then they share whatever they want for that: paper, podcast, sway. So that's our very quick overview of 2.5 weeks.
Very cool. I love how you have the, you know, you've pulled in the SEL, the DEI. It's just really, really a well thought out project.
Thank you.
And it seemed they were extraordinarily engaged as well.
It was incredible because I went into the class and got to watch, and the engagement of nobody was a bystander. Everybody was 100% engaged and asking different kinds of questions. And I went around from group to group and asked some questions, and really, really thought-provoking thinking that was happening with the students. And right now is such a great time to talk about inclusivity that they were like ready to have that conversation and do this work. And Paige was a flawless facilitator. Like, the students were doing the learning and Paige was just facilitating the process, and it was amazing.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing.
Paige, do you think that when you're, did you say, are you still working on the project or is it finished?
We are wrapping up week 2. I mean, I say wrapping up, it's Tuesday.
Right.
So Friday, the students will do a jigsaw and share out innovations with each other. And they were kind of challenged to not pick something that they're already an expert in. Like,
Okay.
if you know a lot about a self-driving car, don't make that your research project. You're going to be bored all week. So a lot of, I mean, for example, one student plays baseball and he's going to research robo umpires, like when the umpire's not a human and what that could mean for
Okay.
the sport, good and bad. So no, we're not done yet. We're going throughout the rest of the week.
That's awesome. It just
Right.
sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love seeing what you're doing.
Mhm.
And honestly, this was high school, but I think nearly everything I just shared could be done at the middle school level. You know,
Mhm.
researching and innovation and sharing out, that's definitely something students could do in younger grades.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, well, thank you to our guest speakers. And then for the coaching, Rich had to leave, Debbie's not here, but Debbie did send out an email, I think last week, giving you some information. She's going to connect with people. Rich and her are going to connect with people after the holiday break. And then just, you know, try to provide you with the resources that you need. Any questions about the coaching? Did everybody receive that email? Teresa, you didn't receive it? You don't? All right. I'm wondering if Debbie just sent it to her group, and maybe, do you have Debbie or Rich, Teresa?
Rich.
Okay, so maybe he's gonna send one out. I'll email him to make sure he does that. I'm writing this down. Okay, so any other questions about the coaching? All right, so we have our optimistic closure. We're going to be done a little early today. I hope you don't mind. So what we want you to do is think about where you are now, and then in the chat, create a 6-word story about your hopes for 2022, because this is the last time we'll see you until 2022. So just a 6-word story about your hopes about it. It could be standard related, or it could just be about your classroom, your learning, however you want to do this, personal, whatever you want to do. And you can just type that in the chat. Take a minute to look, look at other people's, and then we'll wrap up.
These are all very positive. I like them.
No, they are.
You guys are good.
We want to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your attention and your interactivity. It's, I think we all get a chance to learn from each other during these webinars, and we hope you all have a very safe, happy, and healthy holiday season.
And restful.
Yes,
Please.
restful. I think we all need
He's
that.
restful. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.